In every age of human history, there are kings who rise as symbols of greatness, wisdom, and strength. But alongside them, there are also rulers who descend into darkness, rulers whose names are remembered not for their achievements, but for their cruelty, their madness, and the fear they created in the hearts of their own people. This story belongs to the second kind. The king at the center of this tale ruled over a land filled with wealth, beauty, and tradition. His kingdom was known for its scholars, its fertile plains, and its proud warriors. From the outside, it seemed like a golden age, but behind the palace walls, behind the marble pillars and shining banners, there existed a world that the common people could not imagine, a world ruled by fear, silence, and secrecy. This king grew into a man who believed that his desires mattered more than the lives of the people around him. His court became a place where loyal ministers walked with their heads lowered, where servants trembled at the sound of his footsteps, and where his own family lived in quiet terror. The women of the royal house, his sisters, his daughters, and others trapped by blood, status, or misfortune, found themselves the most vulnerable to his cruelty. History often hides such stories under layers of myth and politics, but if we truly want to understand the past, we must look directly at its darkest corners. This story is not meant to entertain. It is meant to reveal how absolute power can twist a human mind so deeply that even the boundaries of family, morality, and humanity begin to disappear. This is the story of the most corrupted court in the kingdom's history. A court where the king's desires ruled over justice, where silence was the only safety, and where innocence became the greatest victim of all. Let us begin our journey into the shadows. 2. A childhood marked by cruelty and privilege. The origins of every tyrant begin long before their crown rests on their head. For this king, the seeds of darkness were planted in childhood. He was born into a world where violence was normal, where power was everything, and where affection was rare. His father ruled with iron discipline, and his mother, though noble, was distant, overwhelmed by palace politics and the dangers of royal life. As a child, he saw punishments carried out in the courtyard, not just on enemies but sometimes on servants, who had committed the smallest mistakes. He learned that anger created results. He discovered that fear could silence anyone. And he grew up believing that authority meant ownership of everything beneath him. The palace was full of luxury, yet empty of love. No one scolded him when he hurt other children. No tutor dared to disagree with him. No guard ever refused his commands. Every demand was fulfilled immediately, and with every passing year he became more convinced that his wishes were equal to law. His sisters, close in age, saw another side of him. A boy who watched them too closely, who followed them more than a brother should, who treated them not as equals, but as objects of control. At first it appeared as childish possessiveness, but over time, it became clear that something deeper and darker was developing in his mind. By the time he was a teenager, the people around him already whispered that he lacked empathy, that he saw emotions as weaknesses, and that he believed affection was something to be taken, not earned. His father ignored these warnings. His mother feared them, but the kingdom remained silent. In that silence, a monster was slowly forming. 3. Ascension to the throne, power with no limits. When his father died, the young prince became king. He was barely prepared for the responsibilities of leadership, but he was more than ready to embrace the absolute power that came with the crown. At first, the court hoped he might be guided by wise ministers, but one by one he removed anyone who questioned him. Some were sent into exile, others died under mysterious circumstances. Soon, only those who accepted his darkest impulses remained beside him. What happened inside the palace stayed hidden from the outside world. The public saw their king riding through the streets in shining armor, waving to them with a confident smile. They did not see the locked doors, the manipulated family members, the terrified servants, or the moral collapse happening inside the royal chambers. The king's sisters, now young women, found themselves at the center of his twisted need for control. He forbade them from speaking with anyone without his permission. He restricted their movements. He removed their ladies-in-waiting and replaced them with spies loyal only to him. And yet, the court remained silent, because to speak against the king was death. Within a year, the palace had transformed from a place of politics and diplomacy into a dark maze of secrets, and the king walked through it like a predator who knew no one could stop him. 4. The Court of Shadows, sisters under his control. The king's sisters were known for their intelligence, beauty, and grace. But to their brother, they were possessions, and his obsession with them grew stronger with every passing month. He isolated them from potential suitors. He canceled arranged marriages. He forced them to remain within the palace walls, surrounded by guards who followed his every order. Their chambers no longer felt like rooms of honor, but like gilded cages. He used emotional manipulation to keep them silent. Sometimes he threatened them. Sometimes he pretended to protect them. Sometimes he expressed twisted affection that confused and terrified them. The royal court knew something was wrong. Ministers whispered in dark corners. Servants cried silently in their quarters. Even the Queen Mother avoided her daughters, fearing the king's anger. But no one dared speak openly. The sisters' suffering became a daily reality. They smiled at official events, but their eyes told the truth. Trapped women who lived under a ruler who had lost all moral boundaries. The king believed that because they shared his blood, they also belonged to him, and this belief was only the beginning of his moral collapse. 5. The daughter's tragedy, innocence in the hands of a tyrant. As the king grew older, he had daughters of his own. Instead of bringing him joy or softening his heart, their presence deepened his darkness. The young princesses were raised inside the suffocating environment he created. They were taught obedience above all else. They were told to never question their father. They rarely saw the outside world, rarely met people, rarely experienced childhood. From the moment they could walk, they felt fear. The king treated them not as precious children, but as fragile belongings. He decided what they wore, where they slept, who they spoke to, and how they should behave. Their lives became performances, every smile rehearsed, every step observed by spies. People in the palace began to notice how the king kept his daughters closer than any father should. His possessive behavior made even hardened warriors uncomfortable. But fear silenced every voice that wished to speak out. The daughters learned early that they had no escape, no freedom, no protection. Their world was as small as the palace walls and as dark as their father's desires for control. And the king's cruelty did not stop with them. 6. The Feast of Corruption, a palace ruled by desire and fear. The king began to host secret feasts deep inside the palace, gatherings that became infamous among servants and guards. No official records describe these events, but the whispers of those who survived painted a chilling picture. The king invited only those who encouraged his worst impulses. Men without morals, women who were forced or manipulated into attending, young courtiers who feared refusing, dancers, entertainers, and officials who had no choice but to obey. The feasts lasted hours, sometimes all night. They were filled with music, alcohol, and destructive indulgence. The king demanded loyalty, obedience, and silence. Anyone who hesitated faced severe punishment. During these events, the king displayed an arrogance that shocked even his closest allies. He treated the women of the palace, including those related to him, as symbols of his absolute dominance. What happened inside those feasts remained hidden from the world, but the emotional and psychological scars they left behind were undeniable. These nights revealed the true nature of the king's soul: dark, twisted, consumed by power. 7. Silent witnesses, servants, guards, and courtiers. Not everyone inside the palace agreed with the king's actions. Many servants tried to protect his sisters and daughters quietly. Some guards intentionally looked away to avoid enforcing cruel orders. Some ministers tried to guide him, hoping to save the family from more suffering. But the king trusted no one. He executed a servant boy who warned one of the princesses. He exiled a guard who refused to lock a door. He replaced ministers with puppets who feared him more than they feared moral failure. Still, within the palace itself, a secret network of sympathy grew. Servants whispered comfort to the princesses. Guards secretly delivered messages between the sisters. Even the Queen Mother occasionally defied her son, though she did so carefully. They were witnesses to horror, trapped between duty and conscience. Their silence was not betrayal, it was survival. 8. A kingdom reacts, public rumors and hidden revolt. Outside the palace, rumors spread through the markets and taverns. People heard whispers of the king's strange behavior, the isolation of his sisters, and the fear inside the royal household. Some dismissed the stories as gossip, others believed them completely. Soon, unrest grew. Merchants complained about new taxes, soldiers grew tired of fighting unnecessary wars. Religious leaders condemned the moral collapse happening in the palace. Finally, a group of ministers began planning secretly. They met late at night, speaking in low voices, knowing that discovery meant death. Their goal was not just to remove the king, but to save the royal family from further abuse. Even ordinary citizens started to resist. Farmers refused to send food to the palace. Soldiers ignored minor royal commands. The walls of fear began to crack. A storm of revolt was building, and the king had no idea. 9. Downfall of a monster, the end of his reign. The first blow came from within the palace. A trusted guard, someone the king believed loyal, opened a door to the ministers leading the revolt. Soldiers entered silently, capturing the king's closest supporters. The king, shocked and furious, tried to rally his forces, but many soldiers refused to obey him. Years of cruelty had destroyed any loyalty he once held. The palace fell in a single night. When the revolutionaries reached the king's chambers, they found him alone, pacing in confusion and rage. He shouted at them, insisting he was chosen by heaven, insisting he was above judgment, insisting his actions were his right. But the world had changed. He was arrested, stripped of power, and later sentenced to exile. But he did not survive long. Without control, without servants, without victims, he became hollow. He died in isolation, a fate he had once forced on his own family. 10. Legacy of horror, lessons from a broken dynasty. The kingdom slowly healed. The sisters and daughters were finally free. The palace was reformed. Laws were created to ensure that no ruler would ever again have absolute power over their family. The king's name became a warning to future generations. Power without limits becomes corruption without boundaries. History does not hide such stories to protect our feelings. It reveals them so we learn, so we reflect, and so we recognize the thin line between leadership and tyranny. The suffering of the women in this tale should not be forgotten. Their endurance shaped a new era of justice. Their pain led to the rise of better kings. Their silence taught the world the cost of unchecked authority. And their story reminds us that even the brightest kingdoms can hide the darkest secrets.